We are recording. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. And we have with us Veronica Monet for the second time. And it's so great to have you here, Veronica. Welcome.
I'm really glad to be here, Alice. Thank you for having me here.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, and I didn't give people your job title. Um,
It's okay.
Veronica is an internal family systems trained relationship coach, an author, a coach, and the founder of the Shame Free Zone.
Yeah.
So great. So, Veronica, what does it mean to be a somatic healer, and what is the shame free zone?
I don't know if I'd go so far as to say I'm a somatic healer.
Oh, we'll just
Um,
say you are. Let's see.
yeah, IFS, internal family systems.
Internal
It
family system
it
relationship
has
coach.
yeah, it
Someone
has
else is.
it has some somatic applications, and I am so like for instance, if a client gets dissociated, I use somatics to bring them back. And that can be like bilateral stimulation. I work with a lot of people online, so I can just have them do like this tapping. And it's bilateral. We're going on one side and then the other. And that can help people kind of get back into their grounding. And the other thing, sometimes I did this recently with a client who got disassociated. So I just asked him to show me every little figurine on his bookcase. And he introduced me to all these little characters from Star Wars and whatnot. And that got him back into his body.
Mhm.
um, and you can also just look around the room. You take a breath, look around the room and notice the colors and the objects, and they get you back into your body because, you know, trauma has a tendency to kick us right out of our bodies.
So yeah, so you work a lot with people who've experienced trauma.
I do. Everybody does. I think it's more, not so much that, well, okay, some of my clients are actually experiencing more trauma, but mostly I feel like they just come out of denial about the trauma when they're in session with
Mm.
me. And then we deal with the parts. And parts are, splitting off into protectors, which can be managers or firefighters, polarized parts that are at cross purposes and want to do different things. And then behind those, we have the exiles, which is like the inner child that is wounded. And getting into self, which has all these beautiful characteristics of compassion and creativity and curiosity and clarity and connectedness and courage and confidence. And um, that is the goal, to get into that place. So that, and if you are in self, you are actually by definition grounded.
Mm.
um
Mhm.
you're just not spun out and, you know being basically driven by parts, which is where a lot of us spend our time. We'll have the manager parts that are wanting us to accomplish certain things, and all the parts are great. It's just that we'd like them to work in concert with self, not hijack the system and run the show. So, for instance, let's say we have a highly efficient manager, but it never knows how to take time off, or it doesn't know how to go into feelings. Or we have a protector who is choosing to take us out of our feelings by indulging in addiction, which could be anything from gambling to food to alcohol or drugs. So, yeah, the goal is to achieve a healthy ecosystem inside.
And that's the internal family systems is
That's
the
internal
different
family
parts
systems.
and getting them
And I started
getting
training
along
in
better.
this a few
Yeah.
years ago. I'm not certified. I'm right now in a 6 month training. I've been in other trainings before. And I've also been in IFS therapy myself for about 8 years. I love it. But I'm an intuitive healer in a lot of ways. And I was working with people's parts before I knew they had parts. I
Mhm,
was just,
mhm,
I mean,
mhm.
like, talk to a client and go, well, I hear you're saying this, but just a few minutes ago, you said this other thing. So that a part of you doesn't agree. And I feel that I want to show up for all parts of you. And that was really my modus operandi before I started going into IFS. When I found the technology of IFS, I was just like, "Oh, wow. This is really helping me do the thing I was born to
We're
do,
gonna
the
do
thing I'm
anyway.
built for."
Yeah,
Yeah,
very, very
yeah,
cool. And so I know you kind of already made a little bit of an allusion to grounded resistance, which is, you know,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is which is my big thing. And so like, with what's happening in the political situation, people are being hijacked by all kinds of reactions.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
what can you
yeah,
tell us about what parts might be activated and how we can collaborate with them rather than feel
yeah.
taken over?
Well, first, I just think it's important to acknowledge that if you're not feeling hijacked by some of your parts, you're then you're probably with the dissociative ones that want to just binge Netflix or eat a bunch of
Mhm.
chocolate or something. Um, Feelings are uncomfortable. Um, some feelings feel great, but a lot of feelings, particularly grief and anger and fear, are very uncomfortable. So
Mhm.
how do we hold that? Like, we don't want to convince ourselves, oh, it's going to be okay, because it may or may not be
May or may
okay.
not be. Yep.
And we don't want to just go into a place of saying, oh, well, whatever, I have my life. I'm just going to stay focused on, my job and my kids, and my household, whatever. Um, at the same time, I've been an activist now my entire adult life. Um, well, except for about 5 years where I was really more enamored with disassociating, and I had drug and alcohol problem.
Mhm.
But I'm celebrating 40 years of continuous sobriety today,
Whew.
and yeah, I'm very grateful.
Congratulations. 40 years
Really, really
contiguous
grateful.
today. Wonderful.
I'm I would be dead if it wasn't for 12-step recovery and lots of therapy. Um, To be an activist might mean that you are protesting in the streets. It might mean that you are working on somebody's campaign. It might mean that you are um, writing letters or sending text messages. It might also mean that you are getting arrested for what you believe in. And I've done all of that. And I'm not I give myself the freedom to choose to not do some of it. I'm not
Mhm.
here to do all of it all the time. Um, going to jail for my activism was glad I did it. I don't really want to do it again.
Mhm.
And that means I necessarily choose activism that is lower risk than what I chose in the past. And I think it's really important that we honor and respect each other's activism,
Mm.
because there are so many ways to be an activist, so many ways to make a positive difference. And it might just be as simple as your Instagram feed. It might be the music that you create or the art. There's some
Mhm.
fabulous people who are resisting online without ever leaving home, without risking arrest. And then there are people who are going to jail. And we need everybody. We need everybody. So I think some of what I recommend is you pick and choose the lanes that work for you and your life and what you're willing to risk and not risk. And also just your health, mental health, physical health. There's only so much that any one of us can do. And then really celebrate and honor and respect what other people are able to do that you may not be able to do or that you may not choose to do right now. And I think that actually can kind of calm the nervous system down, because then we can be in a place of gratitude and appreciation. Like, thank God that person's doing that. So grateful that they're showing up in that way. And oh, look at this other person's doing this other thing. How wonderful. And you can start to feel like you're part of a community. Um, like, these are the people that I'm with. We are each in our own way doing our part. And
Yeah.
then if you really, I mean, 40 years of activism means that I have had to pace myself. If I expose myself to everything all the time, I will just burn out.
Mm,
So right now, I before the election, I was on every headline, every news report. I was I was way into it. Um, Political fundraisers, the whole thing. And then the shock of, oh no, not again.
mhm.
And one of the things that I realized was that the perpetrators in power right now want to create fear.
Yes.
So if I am subjecting myself to their fear mongering, it comes in the form of headlines. So I'm choosing my choice. It's just mine. I'm not suggesting that everybody else has to do this. Basically, just saying, here's the kind of things you can ask yourself. For me, it's too disturbing to just constantly be prodded with one disastrous headline after another. So I prefer to go to some of the deep thinkers that I admire. People like Heather Cox Richardson, Ezra Klein. I like the deep dives that they take into these topics. Anne Applebaum is another one. And that also calms my nervous system down because they usually are talking for an hour or two about a broader perspective. They're bringing in the historical aspects. And for me, that helps me put my fear in context. Um, and I have lots of fear. I would imagine that a lot of us do. So here's the other thing about fear. Um, Fear is always a projection into the future. So in 12-step recovery, we have an acronym. It's false evidence appearing real. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be afraid if a cougar or a bear are after you. And I've been in situations with both. Some of these situations, they're very real. Um, what do we do between the part that knows that fear is a warning system to keep us safe and fear that can turn into a mental, emotional, physiological habit that is causing us to be constantly agitated and on edge? And part of that does require some somatics because one of the things that like a dog that gets frightened is going to do is he's going to shake it off. That, by the way, does not mean that animals don't get post-traumatic stress disorder. They do. And it doesn't mean that they just forget shit. They don't. They remember stuff. But it's a wonderful thing. And so, what can we do in our mammalian bodies? We can work out, we can run, we can hike, we can get into nature. Being in nature where you are with particularly large trees, they have enormous chi that can start to um, pull your system's physiology in sync with their own, which of
Mm,
course is calmer. And nature can just be a beautiful reset. But there's another thing too, cold plunges.
mm,
Cold plunges are an awesome reset. And dancing, if you like five rhythms dancing or you just dance at home to your own favorite playlist, those sort of things get our bodies moving and help us connect with the moment. So, like I said, fear is about the future. Getting out of fear, even for a few moments, like this, you could like ask your manager parts to just take a break for a minute. Yes, we'll come back to the thing we're afraid of and we'll plan. Like, am I going to leave the country? I have that thought in the back of my head. And if
mhm.
so, when? But I don't want to be talking about that inside myself all the time. I don't want to be in a place where I'm just, oh, I'm leaving, I'm leaving.
Well,
Instead,
it's
I
a
want to go, it could happen. But right now, I want to dance or I want to
yeah,
hike. And it is not an avoidance at that point because I
it's a
haven't
break.
said, oh, I can't think about that. I've just said, I'm just going to take a break. I'm going to take a break. And it's a planned break. And then we can come back to that. Um,
Yeah.
so that's
What I'm
another way to stay grounded.
there's something that's coming to me about our evolutionary biology is we have our fear response is kind of on or off, right? And fear for
Yeah.
something likely but not definite in the future building, but we don't know when it's going to break.
Yeah.
We don't have a setting for that. We have a setting for there's a cougar in front of us, and we have a setting for there's no cougar in front of us. We don't have a
Yeah.
setting for, I mean, we kind of do for there are cougar tracks. What are we going to
Yeah.
do so that we don't meet the cougar tomorrow? But not as much.
Yeah. It's Yeah, okay, so I happen to live in cougar country. I mean, not so long ago, a cougar came within 10 feet of my front door. I've had cougars peek in through my living room window. I've been stalked twice by cougars. And what do I do to ground my physiology and continue to live a life with apex predators? I just carry a very powerful bear spray with me, and then I enjoy my walk. I'm aware. I know that my risk mitigation is not a guarantee, just like that seatbelt I put on in my car, not a guarantee. But once I have taken the proper measures, whatever I consider that to be, gotta let it go and live in the moment as best as you can. And then this is where that self attribute confidence comes in, confidence and clarity. The more time that I can spend in self and the less time I can spend in fears that are reactive, parts that are reacting. And I like them. I like to think of them as an alarm, but then once the alarm goes off, turn it off. Don't let it keep playing.
Turn it off,
So,
get up, and make some
yeah,
decisions.
yeah, like, okay, yes, I just met this person. One of my protectors says they've got perpetrator energy. Great. Thank you for letting me know. Now I want to come from a place that's calm and confident and has clarity about what my next move is. And if I'm way into the trigger, like, oh no, they remind me of my uncle or my dad, and some terrible thing is going to happen, um, I spiral into fear. And confidence and fear are not the same thing. And I want to be in a place of clarity of like, okay, what am I going to do? Maybe I need adrenaline, and maybe some of that fear response is going to give me the ability to run away. I mean, one time when I was backing a cougar off, I raised up a tremendous amount of chi. That was prompted by fear, but it came from a place of confidence.
Mm.
And he left. was he saw me and my dog, and he literally started, he was like, oh, hello, I'm coming over to say hi. And I pointed at him and I scolded him as if he was a naughty boy. And he looked shocked, and he turned around and went back the way he came.
Huh.
So yeah, what you have inside, if what you have inside is fear, you're almost a magnet for the things you're afraid of. That's why I want to use fear as an alarm. And then I'm going to ask it to step aside so I can bring this powerful, confident part of myself that can actually cope with the threat in a
Hmm.
successful way. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. I think the other thing we want to talk about is anger. There's a
Yeah.
lot to be angry about. Why don't we want to stay with resentment? I'm guessing it's parallel, but not identical.
Yeah. Well, so I love anger. I'm really glad. I have so much rage about what's happening on our planet right now. Tons of it. But notice I have a smile on my face too. I mean, the
Hmm.
resentment is going to weigh me down. It's like, oh, I really hate these people and I hope something bad happens to them. Look, I have those thoughts on a daily basis, by the way, but I can't live there. It's like, okay, thank you, thought. Thank you, feeling. I know I'm not alone in this. I'm not the only person feeling
Hmm.
this way. But this isn't where I want my energy to be inhabiting. I don't want to reside there. So it's kind of like meditation practice. You allow thoughts to arise. You don't shame yourself for them. you just watch them. There it is, and then let it pass. And what I prefer to do is, okay, if I'm really feeling a lot of anger, is there an action I can do? Because
Mm,
resentment is just like this thing that eats away at your internal organs. And it's been, connected to things like cancer, even. It's just, it's not good for us. It causes inflammation of the system. But if I'm doing an action, like I get really angry about something that's happening, for instance, the gerrymandering in Texas right now really pissed me off. So I am funneling some money, not a lot, just, what I feel comfortable parting with, towards California's efforts to fight back. And that's where my anger's going.
mhm,
But it doesn't feel like a resentment. It's more like I think I will know that I showed up for this moment with my rage. And I call it righteous rage. It's like I'm entitled to feel this righteous rage. I'm and I'm grateful for it. And I'm going to have a happy day too.
mhm,
So if I get into resentments, next thing you know, I start doing self-destructive things. Resentments are the number one killer for alcoholics and addicts. You start nursing a resentment, you feel sorry for yourself, everybody's out to get you. I'd much rather feel my rage and then find the people that I can work with who also are angry and want to do something about it. Yeah.
mm.
In a
Yeah, I'm
personal
thinking.
relationship I just wanna bring this part home. If you feel anger about something that someone did to you, you can go talk to them about it, you can take it to your therapist, you can work with your parts by yourself, whatever feels right, but to get to the place where you can let go of needing to hang on to that, because a resentment is only harming you. Your anger, on the other hand, another beautiful alarm system. It's letting you know this is not okay.
And it can move, and as you were saying, it can move you into action, right? Like resentment can weigh you
Yeah.
down, but anger can move you into action. My ex-girlfriend twice had confrontations with two different mayors because she was angry, and she, like, her shyness disappeared in her
Ah,
anger.
yeah. Yes. Oh, I know. The other day, I asserted a boundary with a woman who was interfering with something I was trying to do. I was trying to help a dog um, that had needed to be rescued. And I felt angry and asserted a very powerful no. And later on, an older woman came to shame me for that powerful no and
Mm,
said I could have found a nicer way to say it. And I I know what that's code for.
mm,
It almost there's like this expectation that women in particular, women identified people in particular, are supposed to say, "I'm sorry, but."
mm,
I,
mm.
that is not in my vocabulary. Because I'm not sorry. No is a complete sentence.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's okay. And that's hard to take for some people have a really hard time for it. And I'm not surprised that your friend had difficulty with that, particularly because of the gender that they present with. I think it's a common problem that women identified people are going to experience is that you're supposed to be nice when you do that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and
Sorry, no.
not this time, not this time, and yeah.
That's the only time you're gonna hear me say sorry.
So,
Yeah.
and if we're when we actually, how do I want to put this all together? So, right, anger to action, not to resentment, fear to information, not to spiraling. And ultimately, the goal is to get to being grounded where the self is leading and the other parts are just communicating.
Yeah, and one of the things a lot of times when people are trying to get to that place of being confident and having clarity and being calm is they're using a very powerful manager to control all the parts. And that's just not sustainable.
Mm.
So the successful sustainable approach is to get curious about all the parts. So if I had a part that was feeling very reactive about the woman telling me I should have said it nicely.
Mhm.
And what my process with that was to locate the part and find out when was the first time it was experiencing that. And of course, it took me all the way back to my mother, who always told me, find a nice way to say it. And she was a trad wife. So she was trying to raise me up to be a trad wife. And, you don't talk with authority if you're a trad wife. So when I see where, oh, okay, so it really has very little to do with
Yeah,
this
that's
woman, it puts me on notice that she's a risk to me in some way. Like she's probably going to do that again. But I'm more interested in how my training makes space for somebody to interact that way with me.
mm,
Because I certainly have friends that would never be talked to that way. So that's where I'm more engaged than trying to figure this woman out, is more about what about me? What is it about me that I can shift energetically? Now, I can't do that with a pull myself up by the bootstraps approach. What I really have to do is get curious about the parts that are doing other stuff. And I certainly know that I have parts that knew early on that if I did not seem threatening, my parents would be less abusive towards me.
mm,
So, see, right there now, I can have some compassion for this part that's kind of pulling in this abuse and realize that that part is giving off a message of complacency or cooperation or acquiescence, even like I'm just, I'm not a threat, I'm not a threat, don't hurt me, which ironically pulls in certain type of people who
plenty,
will
yeah,
hurt you.
yeah.
Yeah, but that that process of getting curious about where did the part come into being, what was it trying to cope with, and how can I give it the validation that it needs. Curiosity and compassion when I go towards this part is, oh, of course that's what you did. Of course that's what you did. Totally understand that. I get that. And by the way, we're not there anymore. As a matter of fact, both your parents are dead. We call that updating the parts file. I'm actually like telling the part, it's 2025. Mom and dad died. We don't have to worry about them anymore hurting us. Okay. So this woman's not them. And sometimes a part really needs to have those distinctions. I would take this to the political landscape and say that I mean, Me Too showed us that a lot of women have been sexually assaulted
Yeah.
or harassed in some way. And now we've got a huge sexual predator in the White House. And we're watching him possibly pardon another predator who's in prison right now. Maybe he will, maybe he won't. But if our parts are not feeling triggered around this, that would be highly unusual. so so here's the thing. And this one's harder to work with because that woman who is trying to shame me is just some woman.
Yeah.
But the president is the president. And trying to tell my parts, well, mom and dad have died, doesn't really cut it. But I can let them know that I'm an adult
Hmm.
and I have a current passport. Um,
Yeah.
and I have 40 years of activism. And I probably am going to be safer than those parts think I am. because I'm not under my parents' thumb anymore. I'm not in the cult that I was raised in. So just as kind of reminders to give myself a little spaciousness so I'm not coming from a triggered place so that I can bring self to bear. And if self is online, if self is the one that's in charge, it's going to be more like, oh yeah, it's time to leave the country, or no, no,
Not yet.
things are still very interesting here. I want to stay here and see what I can do to make a positive difference. And that's a different place than, oh my god, I gotta leave. Or, oh no, we're losing all our rights, and then I go into tipping over into resentment, and I'm just feeling a lot of hatred. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Very clear and very powerful. Veronica, we're
Yeah.
getting close to the end of our conversation. Um,
Okay.
will you share with the audience about your free gift? Do you remember what it was?
Yes. Now it's geared towards people who are in romantic relationships with each other, but it doesn't have to be. Um, I have used a lot of the tools that are in this ebook with family members, and I'll probably use it with that woman who tried to shame me the other day. See, if I get into self, I can access these tools. So, and it's chocked full of a lot of tools. So, one of them is a timeout. Lots of people think they're taking timeouts, and they're not. They're actually kind of perpetrating towards each other, and it's
Mm,
having a abusive impact on the relationship. So I detail the specific steps to take a proven timeout. And this is the kind of timeout that works in domestic violence situations. So, you know,
mm.
hopefully your relationship is not in that kind of a crisis.
And some
But
people's might
it's
be.
it's road tested. It's road tested. And then there's a little game in there called Show Me Your Movie. And it's an empathy game. And it's really about suspending our need to be right or to own the truth and to tell each other what is, oh, no, that's not what I said. No, that never happened, which is where a lot of people go. I would never say such a thing. I would never do such a thing. How dare you accuse me of that? I put that to the side. It's like, it doesn't really matter. I like to tell people when it comes to relationships, there's no facts, there's just feelings. So let's hear each other's feelings. And let's do it as if you were watching a movie. Because if you're watching a movie, you're just like sitting there totally empathizing with the character who's living this experience. And if you can learn to do that with your partner or somebody else that you really care about, it's amazing how the conflict sometimes just evaporates. You don't even solve the quote unquote problem. You just get your hearts connected empathetically. And then they're like, oh, okay, well, I see how it was for you. And of course, that's how you felt because that's what you thought happened. And here's what I thought happened. And neither one of us will ever know what the actual truth is because guess what? We didn't have a camera going. Um, yeah. And then there's the 5 steps to exquisite partnership. It is a 5-step process for a very firm no, and it's meant to be in sexual context. You can use
Mm,
it in just about any context, but I particularly love it in a sexual context. And this grew out of the fact that so many of my female identified clients were sub- agreeing to participating in sex that they hated
mm,
because they didn't want to hurt their partner's feelings. And I was like, well, that's not good. You're just traumatizing your tissues. And then, of course, you're going to get to a place where you can't even really experience sexual pleasure anymore. So we have to find a way to be able to say no. And it involves a very enthusiastic invitation to one's sexual partner to engage in an alternative.
mm.
So there's a very specific delivery of it, but I used that same method actually when I was trying to help a group of renters and their landlord. So
Yeah, a boundary is a boundary is a boundary.
it is. Yeah, you can actually use it with children. Oh, it is a great time if you have children. Like it's like, oh, I totally understand why you want to do that. And no, we're not going to do that. But you know what? I would love it if you wanted to do this with me. So, I mean,
Amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. All sounds super fabulous. So glad to be with you.
Yeah.
And
Same here.
Veronica.
Same here. I'm just really glad that you are continuing to help people find a way to persist in their resistance.
Mm,
Thank you for that.
yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for your commitment and your skills and your generosity.
Yeah. My pleasure.
Thank you. And that's the end of our conversation for now.